Thank you very much. Creativity, playfulness, but with serious intent. Those were the things that attracted me to come to this PINC conference today. That was what I sensed in the literature, and I've certainly not been disappointed. There are also words that I would hope could apply to our own city in Bristol, England, where I have a sense of playfulness with serious intent around the city. All sorts of things happening, and I'm going to try and tell you some of the things I've been involved with today. I like to start talks with an expression of values, which I guess these values would be shared by most people in this auditorium, but I like to start with them to say this is what I care about, this is where I'm coming from. And of those, just now, I would place harmony with the earth myself as the most important thing that we need to apply ourselves to. What I'm doing is, I suppose, a reflection of my concern about the fact that the human species needs to live in a better harmony with the earth, absolutely, urgently. So we need to apply ourselves to that. And the way I'm thinking is that one great step towards that would be if we could learn to live as cities sustainably. That more than half the world now lives in towns and cities, and in what we call the developed world, more than 80% of people live in towns and cities. That's not going to change, but cities are also a great opportunity and a great hub of creativity. And I think if we could learn to live sustainably in city regions, then we could go a long way towards cracking the global problem that we're faced with. My sense is that one key strategy that we need to put in place is to localize those things which it's appropriate to localize. So that's not everything about what we do, but there is an awful lot of our world today that can and should be, I would suggest, be localized, and that would have the effect of cutting carbon emissions, keeping a local diversity, a local cultural expression, and strengthening local community by paying attention to the local. And I think there are four key drivers of change towards, like in this case, a sustainable city where we can think about localization. And they are in terms of finance, energy, food, and governance. I think one of the problems we're facing today is an unfettered capitalism that, aided and abetted by financial institutions that are at least partly corrupt, is wrecking the earth. I think you might say that's an extreme statement, but that's actually where I come from. And there is an opportunity, I think, to reinvent financial systems. Why do we take them as given? Why do you think that the euro or whatever is in your pocket is the only way of dealing with money and the financial institutions that are attached to that? So, whoops, try that. I'm going to suggest there is an alternative, and I'm going to talk about a financial system and a food system that's trying to be expressed locally in a different way, expressing the sort of values that I've described. In the financial system, I'm interested in thinking about money in what I see its the original purpose, why cultures developed money, was an instinct for fair exchange. It's something that you'll find in your children when you talk to them. They know what fair exchange is. Actually, people like Frans de Waal, who work with chimpanzees, can demonstrate a concern for fair exchange even amongst chimpanzees. I think that's the roots of money. I also think there's an opportunity to reconnect money with the culture in which it sits and the values which that culture represents. So it's actually reinvesting money with values And that's something of what we're trying to do with the Bristol Pound. Caroline's going to pass around some printed Bristol Pounds. There are only 4 of them, and just pass them on when you've had a look at them as I talk. Don't be distracted by that. And Caroline will collect them at the end, because, of course, they're valuable. These ones actually came from the very first print run. I think they're number 92 or something, of more than 100,000 now in print. So we did a design competition to design the currency. We said to the people of the city, what would you like your printed currency to look like? We had 200 applicants, and you'll see what the results were, particularly beautiful designs. We put them into a template that carries 9 different security features, printed by secure printers. We had a printed currency. We also talked to the Bank of England about whether or not these were legal tender and what that meant, because we have laws, and we had a really interesting meeting where 5 of us went up to London. We met with the Treasury, the Bank of England, Financial Services Authority, and all those people, and they were really quite constructive with us, but it was quite an awe-inspiring meeting for us. So, a printed currency. Then we, like the earlier speaker, noticed the power of text payments, and so we developed, in partnership actually with the Bristol Pound, a mobile phone payment system backed by banking-level secure software, whereby you go into a shop and all you have to do is make a text that carries your PIN number, the trader name, and the amount, send it to the computer, and your account is automatically deducted by that amount, and you receive a confirmation text that that's happened, and so does the trader on their phone. And we've just developed some apps to go alongside that to make the actual texting process easy. So a text-to-pay system, as we call it. And we also have behind that an online banking system so that you can make payments online like you do with your conventional bank accounts. Again, they make immediate payments that are shown to both parties, and your text payments appear immediately on this list. So we had a printed currency, a text payment system, which was, in all intents and purposes, like the equivalent functionally of a debit card, and an online payment system. Our commitment was that we wanted to do a currency across a whole city because we felt that a currency truly can only be called a currency when people have real choice about how to spend it. That means you've got to get to scale in order for it to be called a currency. So it had to be in both printed form and electronic, and we had to try to be across the whole city. So that's what we tried to do. The next stage was to recruit businesses. So we went around encouraging businesses to join, and the crucial point here is we went to locally owned businesses to join our scheme. So those chain stores and supermarkets and such like were not allowed to join the scheme. The idea was to, if you like, redress the power balance, whereby all our high streets are now being cloned by international chains, so as to protect the diversity and the culture which depends on those high streets, and to give just a bit of a leg up to people who are starting new businesses in our city. That was the aim. The theory behind it is that if you create a money that stays in a local community and goes from hand to hand, then the more times it changes hands, the more value it is to the local community before it goes off to, say, London financial institutions and gets lost. It's called the local multiplier effect, and the New Economics Foundation have researched it. So we launched the currency, the Bristol Pound, on September the 19th, 2012, at 12 noon Bristol time. It's 11 minutes different from London. I don't know if you knew. It used to be. Before the trains, we had a time that was different from London. And we had a clock which showed the old Bristol time. And underneath a nail, a pillar thing, which was an ancient place of exchange. So we exchanged our first Bristol pounds on the nail at 12 noon, and then everybody lined up to buy their Bristol pounds. And the first person in the queue said, "I'll have £500, please." And then the queue went right down the street. And we were amazed at people's response to the currency. Where are we now, 2.5 years in? And we have about 800 businesses in the city who accept Bristol Pounds in one form or another. We have about 1,400 members, which means people with electronic accounts. We've sold around £1 million in printed currency. I should explain, the currency is 1-to-1 with sterling. People buy it into existence, so they buy it 1-for-1 with sterling as they're part of their commitment to the local community. What people are saying is, essentially, if I get £1,000 a month, I will put 200 of it into the local community by using Bristol Pounds. So they might have a standing order for £200 a month into their Bristol Pound account, which they'll then seek to spend with member businesses. So it's a way of individuals in the city saying, I care about being a sustainable city, or I care about backing the city, just generally. I care about local community, businesses, those sorts of things, so I'll use the Bristol Pound. Whole range of values it appeals to. Important developments for us were when the bus company, we did a deal with the bus company so that they can accept the printed currency on the buses to encourage people to use public transport. Negotiations with the local authority have always been important to us, and from the beginning they were accepting business rates in Bristol Pounds, which means that any business with Bristol Pounds could use them to pay their business rates. They can actually also turn them back to sterling if they so choose. And very recently, the council have started accepting council tax. This is payments from individuals for their local taxes in Bristol Pounds. That's our local mayor, who, when he was campaigning to be elected, said he would take his whole salary in Bristol Pounds, and he has done so. And he's been a great advocate of Bristol Pounds for the last 3 years. That's George Ferguson with the red trousers, which he's famous for. And he's part of the fun and playfulness of the city as well as a very serious mind. Okay, so that's a bit about the Bristol Pound. One of the key things we need to do, so it's really still quite small beer. There are areas of the city we haven't got to. We need to up the volume of exchange if it's going to become sustainable itself, financially sustainable, and if it's going to have the real effect we want to in stimulating the local economy. So we recognise we've got some way to go, and I've lost a slide somewhere. And we're developing a number of new initiatives around out of the Bristol Pound. One is a business-to-business credit system. We're also working with other towns and cities across the UK to set up local currencies. Exeter is starting in September. Cardiff next spring. Liverpool's looking at doing one. So there are a number of local currencies springing up. But what we really want to do is to encourage the main budget items of people's lives, like the council tax, but also food, to be used in the local currency. So the thing I'm applying myself to now is called real economy. I'd like to describe it as an alternative to supermarket shopping. I think there are issues with the way supermarket culture has developed. If you take the traditional model of food retail in the UK, is a journey from farmers to wholesalers to shops to customers. The modern method, which is now dominant in our country, is farmers to supermarkets to customers. What we're trying to do is to set up buying groups in neighbourhoods that source fresh food from local producers almost directly as we can. We think there's obvious efficiencies there, but we're also doing other things. By using buying groups, we're bringing people in neighbourhoods together to talk about food. Where do you want to get your food from? We're bringing them in touch with local producers who are struggling often to make ends meet themselves. And so we hope there'll be a sense of solidarity amongst people as we source fresh food from local producers in communities. And we have a web tool to help people do this, to facilitate the exchange and make sure everybody gets paid and all that stuff. And so we're hoping that it can become a new system of food retail. I mean, of course, wherever possible, we encourage people to work in Bristol Pounds, but they don't have to. So we're a not-for-profit cooperative. We join up these buying groups across the city. We're encouraging a whole make, do, grow, make and do things for each other type culture. So we're encouraging new enterprises to form within the cooperative. And we're trying to source healthy food from local producers, make the food as affordable as possible, and crucially, treat everyone in the food chain with respect. And I would actually say starting with the soil. Treat the whole food chain with respect. That seems to me to be the challenge. In a world actually where supermarkets have pushed the price of food down so low, it's extremely difficult for people to enter the market. So that's the aim. We've only been going 6 months. We have 9 buying groups in existence, about 100 members. We're very small, and the volume of trade is very small, but actually I have real hopes that this could become a different system of food retail, at least for people in the UK. We're trialling it in Bristol, and if it goes well, we'll try to see if other cities and regions want to do it. My particular aim is to get fresh food into the most challenging areas of the city, often places where everything else in the city passes them by, if you know what I mean. People who are really struggling even to feed their children, let alone give them healthy food. We want to try to use buying groups as a way of encouraging people to think about food, therefore source healthy food, but also get to know their neighbours and find a community in which they can find some personal solidarity, and where talking about food will lead to improved nutrition, maybe improved personal budgeting, all sorts of challenges that people face in those parts of the city. This is the big plan that the food gurus in the city have put together about a good food plan for Bristol. Our part in it, we see, is in the middle at the bottom, which is to increase market opportunities for local and regional suppliers. I think what Real Economy is doing is setting up a system whereby all sorts of local producers can sell into the city easily using our web tool, however small they are. So it doesn't privilege the large producer. It actually allows anybody to play because they can all have a presence on the web tool, therefore all have access to our buying groups. That's the idea. And in the last 2 minutes, I love this quote from John McKnight and Peter Block from their book, The Abundant Community, which says, "We're not consumers, we're not clients. We are citizens with gift and power to make powerful communities." I really dislike the description of ourselves as consumers. I think it's one of the most degrading descriptions that human beings have ever allowed anybody to give them. We are citizens. And we know in this room how creative we can be. We can create our future. We have challenges sometimes, and we're staring at our boots about those challenges. But I think we need to face them, and we need to reimagine how we're living together as human society today. And these are some of the things we're doing in Bristol. I've been delighted to hear some of the things that other people here at PINC are doing. Let's see what we can do together. Thank you.